There we go. So today we're just going to do a quick overview of Mukurtu CMS. We're going to take a little bit of time to go over the software, some of the core features, the basic layout. I've got a few example sites to show you, and we have time for questions and answers at the end, but obviously ask questions as we go. That's a picture of me down in the corner so you know who's speaking. Sometimes we do video sessions as well, but not this morning. All right, any questions before we get going, either audio or if someone's catching up with us on with the text chat? All right. So through Mukurtu.org, we provide support for the open source, freely available source code that powers Mukurtu, and we also provide support for communities and users who are looking to run their own instance of Mukurtu. We don't provide it through WSU hosting or other extended services, but at the end of the presentation, I'll give some more information about options. Like I said, we produce the software, we provide basic support and training, but we don't necessarily help you install and run it yourself. You've probably heard me say it already. The name of the software is Mukurtu. It's a Warramungu word from the Warramungu people in Australia, and it means dilly bag, which was a safekeeping place for ritual materials. I think before I actually had my interview here, I hadn't heard it pronounced or heard the name before, so lots of people have that as a first question. And Mukurtu is designed as a free and open source solution for Indigenous communities to manage and share digital cultural content. I did mention earlier that it's by no means restricted to Indigenous or Native communities. It has a range of uses, and it's been used in a lot of other types of public archives as well. Over the last 5 or so years, we initially developed it through help with the Center for Digital Archaeology, CODA, and WSU, and a whole bunch of other people have been involved as sponsors, support development over the years. This is just a small sampling of them. We partnered with a lot of great developers, Canopy, MaptApp, CODA. It's all funded through, not all, it's largely funded through IMLS and NEH grants. And this is still just a sample of the few people who have been involved. We always have lots of good champions and supporters out there driving us forward with new developments and new additions to the software. So this past summer, we launched the newest version of Mukurtu, Mukurtu CMS 2.0. And just a few weeks ago, we finished the latest development push, and we've released the version 2.0.3 that has a whole bunch of new features built into it because we're always developing. Some of the core features of Mukurtu, and I'm going to go ahead and show these a little bit later. We call them the 3 Cs, the communities, cultural protocols, and categories. Communities are a way to group your users and your content contributors together. Cultural protocols are used to provide levels of access within communities so that the right users can see the right content. And finally, categories are used to describe, describe content throughout the site. They facilitate browsing and discovery. There's a whole lot more features, so if there's anything specific you'd like to hear about, let me know, and I'll be able to get into that as well. The other sort of core content kernels on Mukurtu are called digital heritage items. In the screenshot, you can see there's 3 digital heritage items up there. They can be pretty much any kind of content. We have support for text, image, audio, video, a whole range of different formats and file types. So some folks have been using it for video or audio archives or just images. It works really well for an image display quite nicely. There's room built into the metadata for conventional library or archival. It's based on a version of Dublin Core. But more importantly, we've made it quite easy for community members to add their own traditional knowledge and cultural narratives and to decide who has access to the information that they add. So content on your site can be public, it can be private, it can be a mix of both depending on what you're making available. We also recently launched the latest version of Mukurtu Mobile. This is something that comes enabled with all new Mukurtu CMS sites, and it can be added to older ones. It allows you to capture and create content in the field to be uploaded to your Mukurtu CMS site. Currently, it only works with iOS, so Apple devices. We are looking at getting it available for Android and other services as well. Mukurtu Mobile doesn't replace a Mukurtu CMS site, you have the Mukurtu CMS site, and then you can have the mobile app on your device and interact with your site. You can collect content while you're offline and then upload it when you come back into town. So that's a really neat feature that was added. And now I want to show you a few sample sites and some of the basic features of a Mukurtu site. Okay. And my internet is, I think, a little bit slow today, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, so this is our in-house demo site that we use at WSU. I put training materials up on here, and it's also a place where interested users can play around a little bit. This is pretty much what it looks like out of the box, uncustomized. I've added a banner. I've created a few communities, but it's when you just install the software, it is quite plain. We like it. We think it looks nice, and we've spent a fair bit of time working on the design. I'm just going to go into one of the communities down here that I created this morning. Turns out I've been traveling a lot lately, so I've been taking photos all over the state as I'm driving around. So this community is called Washington Landscapes. I'm using it to host images of Washington State that I've taken. And you can see here we have digital heritage items, a couple from around campus and a couple from around the rest of the state. If you want to go into any of them, it displays a little bit more metadata. I haven't added much information here. I'm going to show you another site in a moment that has much more robust content. But this is sort of a bare bones image, and there's lots of different ways to browse. One of the neat features that we just added actually was a map view. So we had communities who were requesting a nice way to map and display their images or display their digital heritage items on a map. So a short while ago, there was a development with one community to produce that, and then we liked it so much that we decided to add it for everybody. So now this is something that comes bundled into all new Mukurtu sites. We get a lot of our ideas and our inspiration from communities who are using them. So any items that I've added to a map, they're going to show up here. So Mount Baker, when I was traveling up there last year, Snoqualmie Pass from the most latest drive down, and then a few sideways ones from around Pullman here. And then you can jump into any of the items directly from the map as well. So that's just a nice new feature that we've added that's quite recent. This is the latest version of the Plateau People's Web Portal. We're still working on it, migrating it from an older version. So this is working with local Plateau nations, Plateau tribes, to host their content that has been digitally returned from WSU and other institutions as well. And let's see if I can find it. Yeah. So this site has been customized a little bit more. It's not heavily modified, but we've added, as you can see, a background image and a couple of different options for navigation. Ooh, it's going slow. It will go in a moment, I promise. So part of the background behind this site is there was materials held in these different institutions that's relevant to multiple Plateau tribes. So the hope was that, as you'll see in a moment, that we can have information about the institutional records that is then supplemented by information from the community members. And in fact, members from multiple communities can comment and add information on the same item. Oh my. My department's in one of the older buildings on campus, and sometimes we have connection issues. Let's try it this way. There we go, it's going a little bit smoother now. Okay, So here is, as you can see, we have a tab up here that says Washington State University Manuscripts and Special Collections. So this is the record from our institution here. This is where we got the image from, and a very brief description and some of the generic metadata down the right-hand side. Some of the information community protocol category is unique to Mukurtu, and that's how we provide access and organize our content. But then the rest of this is fairly standard Dublin core metadata, publication information, identifier that links it back to our original collections here at WSU. And one of the really important features is, up at the top here, we also have the Yakima record. So in this case, a member from the Yakima community has added a cultural narrative. So it's basically a free-form text box where they can add more information if they want to. They could also flesh out the metadata. In this case, it's a fairly small record. But this is one example of having sort of the generic institutional record and then a more robust community record. And since I'm logged in, I have access to all of this, but users could set it up to have more restrictive access, so not everyone is able to view it, depending on how you want it to be used. So this is a second sort of in-house instance of the site that we're working with. This is the Ludic Museum. We help set them up. This isn't something that I have backend access to. It's not something that we manage. So this is mostly recording audio. So this is speakers of the Ludic language, and they've set up a few different nice ways to interact with the site. Again, this is very, very lightly customized. They've set up sort of a landing page for all of their speakers, and then if you go into one of them, it should take us to, there we go, a landing page for that individual. Let's see what else we have on their site. Right. In this case, they've used collections, which is another feature built up, so you can group items from multiple communities in different orderings and sort of curate them within a collection if you want to. This first one here is the bulk of their archive, so we have 188 audio recordings. So pop into it. And then you can play it directly from within the browser. I'm not sure if anyone can actually hear that through my speakers or not, but it allows you to embed audio in this case. We're also able to embed video. Either you can upload it yourself or upload it to an external hosting site like Vimeo or YouTube and embed video there. So there's a lot of different ways you can use that. And the last site I wanted to show you is the Mira Canning Stock Root project. This is actually built on an older version of Mukurtu. We're currently on 2.0. This was built on 1.0 or 1.5, and it was heavily customized. As you can see, the interface looks quite different. They had a full graphic design team working on this, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful example of what can be done. They've really gone above and beyond with this. So this is a more expensive option when it comes to building it out. But you can see that we have a lot of the similar metadata here with the cultural protocols, the communities, and then some of the more generic metadata, and then information provided by community members. So those are just a few different examples of everything from a very heavily customized one-off site to moderate customization to our very basic, minimally customized demonstration site. Let's see what's next. So many of the features that we offer came about because of a community need. Like I showed the mapping feature earlier, that was something that the community said, we like the site, but can we do this? We helped them develop it. And then we decided that we were going to add it ourselves as well, because if one community is interested in having it, most likely it would be relevant to a whole lot more people. So we really try to push community-inspired developments upstream to share it with and share the source code with other users. We're always developing whenever it's never done. We're always looking to add new features, improve functionality, and there's the occasional bug that comes up. But we have developers in-house here at the library, so we can usually address those as needed. There's a few different ways to get Mukurtu. We have 3 here on this page. The one on the left is going through GitHub and downloading the source code yourself. That's free to use. Anyone can do it. Mukurtu is powered by Drupal, which is a fairly standard server language. It's a very standard server language. So that's something that if you have an IT department in-house can be a great option. If you want someone to do all the work for you, you're like, we want to use it, we want to use the software, but we don't have either anybody with the expertise to run the back end, or we don't have the resources to run it. Mukurtu.net is the option for that. That's run by Coda. They provide a whole range of different hosting and customization services. They're great at what they do. And then there's also a third option that's launching hopefully sometime this month through Reclaim Hosting, and that's going to be somewhere in between. It's basically going to be a one-button install. It'll be cheaper than what's offered through Coda and Mukurtu.net, but they don't provide any customization. It's just getting the service up and running and hosting it. And then you're on your own when it comes to customization there. So there's a few different options depending on exactly what your needs are and what your capabilities are at your institution. There's a few different places to get resources or to get help. You've probably already seen mukurtu.org, but if not, I'll just pop over to that quickly. So here, I manage the site. You can get information about Mukurtu and keep up to date on the latest features that we're developing. There we go. A little bit more about the background and people who are all involved in the funding. And you can also, we put on lots of events and trainings. Catch us at future events. We do obviously the twice monthly office hours. We're going to be at Northwest Archivists Association in April. We're going to be up in Alaska in Fairbanks in March. We were at ATALM this past September for a week. We're going to have a whole bunch more coming up, and this page will be updated periodically once we have more events to announce. And there's also more information here about how to get Mukurtu. So we have the GitHub option on the left here, and I'll take you to the source code. Or you can pop over to mukurtu.net and see what Coda and Codify offers. And that's their service. There's also a support site. I'm in the middle of updating this with a bunch of new tutorials, some video walkthroughs, a whole bunch of hopefully useful resources. But if you're running Mukurtu or you have technical questions, this is the place to go to look for those resources, or you can always email me at support@mukurtu.org or directly at my personal address here at WSU. Are there any questions at the moment?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So I have a question about the user base. If you have anything from your research or just anecdotal about communities that may not have someone who is tech savvy being able to use Mukurtu, like does it require someone who can work with the software? I mean, are there any tools for people who might not be comfortable with technology?
So that's where these options come in. So the first option, doing it yourself with the GitHub code, that definitely does require a fair bit of in-house expertise. The other two options, though, Reclaim Hosting, once that's fully launched, and Mukurtu.net, which is provided through Coda, are great options for people who don't have the resources in-house to do it themselves. They each offer, basically Mukurtu.net is, depending on your contracts and what you agree on with them, that's sort of the full services. If you agree with them that you're going to get a fully customized site, I'm sure that's something that they can do. But they can also just host a fairly basic site. And Reclaim Hosting, once they're up, will be able to host a pretty basic site for you. It'll be sort of a matter of emailing them, paying them, and then it'll be up and available for you to use
So,
the interface.
even like some of the communities that you work with on in Native American communities, so is there usually some organization that's going to go ahead and set up Mukurtu and then get the elders to kind of weigh in on some of the artifacts? Is that the model for some of these more rural or isolated communities?
Right. Yes, yes and no. So a lot of the current implementations of it are involve some kind of digital return from a larger institution, but there are some communities who are hosting it themselves. Obviously, well, not obviously, since communities may be dealing with potentially sensitive content, we always recommend that you have some kind of oversight board on hand, depending on what kind of information you're putting into it or you're hoping to put into it. It can be difficult to develop community buy-in in any kind of project like this. It really depends on the community. So another project that we have here at Washington State University is a tribal stewardship cohort program. So we have members from 6 different communities around the nation coming in. They're paired with us for a year. So they come in, we're doing a whole bunch of additional training, but they get a site out of it. So that's all supported by, it's different for each community, but some it's the tribal government who is supporting it. In some cases, it's their cultural institution, be it the library, an archive, a community center. So those all have someone on board who's really interested in pushing for it and using it within the community. Not sure if that answers your question at all.
Yeah, no, it does. It's a good kind of sample case of how you can make it work with kind of a bridge with these students or with staff or faculty that are engaged with the communities, and this is a tool to help work with them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it certainly varies on a case-by-case basis. So we don't, we like to, within the CDSC and WSU here, we try to get people interested, but ultimately it's up to a community if they're interested in, in buying into it and getting the software, getting the service going. And depending on exactly who it is, we provide a different range of training and support, depending on who's trying to work with it.
In terms of access and users, so once it's set up and it's running, can individual community members contribute, like upload content, or is it just the administrator and you have to have certain permissions?
Individuals can absolutely upload content. So I'll show you a little bit then of the back-end interface of what it looks like. So I'm on our demo site here. Currently I'm logged in as sort of the highest level site-wide admin, so I have a whole bunch of buttons and options up here. If I log out, you'll see this is what's shown to a non-member. I don't have any content really behind closed protocols on this site since it is all public. I don't really have any private sites to share. You can see that along the top is just this gray header. When I log in as an administrator, I have the options to create digital heritage, categories, collections, communities, protocols. I can add users. I can edit my account. And within Mukurtu, there's a range of different user roles. So we have community managers, protocol managers, contributors, curators. There's a whole bunch of different functions that users can serve, and each of them has a different level of access, depending on what their role is within the community or within a specific contributor group. So generally, most sites, sort of the composition is there'll be a few Mukurtu administrators, but a whole bunch of community administrators and community editors. So individuals who have been granted permission by whoever is on the decision-making community to grant access. You can have individuals can be able to do very specific things within a site, whether it's adding content, commenting on other people's content, editing it, creating new sub-communities within the website. There's a whole bunch of different functions that can be served by different users.
And then I wonder if you could talk about the differences between Mukurtu and Omeka, how you guys kind of see yourselves as different.
Sure. I haven't used Omeka a lot lately. I haven't looked at the latest version of it in a little while. The big thing is, and I didn't dig into it too much here, is the cultural protocols and the communities within Mukurtu. So within this particular site, there's actually more, but you can see 3 different communities here. I like to think of communities as contributor groups. So within a tribal example, common communities would be tribal government or the education department or language and learning. And each of those would be set up as their own community. And then within each community, you'll see here on the right, there's protocols. So cultural protocols reside within a community, and they allow a finer level of access. So within this particular community, I have a public and a community-only protocol. Things that are within the public protocol will be visible to anyone who comes to the site, whether they're logged in or not, whether they're a member of the community or not. Things that I put within the community-only protocol, I can identify exactly who has access to that protocol and who can edit it and who can view it. So actually, if I log out and go back to this community, this is the only item that's within the public protocol. I'm currently logged out. I'm not registered as a site user. And then when I log in, the Mukurtu realizes that I am a member of the private community, and then it shows me all the other content. You can generate very, very granular access with that. Sort of the common examples we give are if you have materials that are only meant to be viewed by women over a certain age, you would set that up as 2 different protocols. One would be, elders, and the other would be women. You overlap them together. So if an item has a protocol that is only to be viewed by people over, say, age 55, and it also has a protocol that's only to be viewed by women within this community, you put them together, and then those items within those protocols can only be viewed by women over the stated age. So that type of protocol is really the core of providing access. And then the other sort of big function is, jumping back over to the portal, is the ability to have multiple records on the same item. So in this case, let me see if I can find a more interesting one quickly. I think we have a bunch of stuff in the current line.
Like the institutional records, are those from a finding aid, or are they just?
Well, it can be from wherever. In this case, yeah, this one is from the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture up in Spokane. So they've provided us with sort of this chunk of the record. The rest is generated by Mukurtu for the institutional record, and then Coeur d'Alene, which is the local tribe, has provided some additional information that lists a different creator, a little more information about who actually has the rights, and a different description that has some more information. So, and actually a completely different title. You may not notice that, so we have, oh no, the title is the same in this one, my bad. Yeah, it is the same title. But it could be a completely different set of metadata attached to the same image. So, and just that conceptually is a big part of Mukurtu. In this case, we only have the institutional and the Coeur d'Alene record, but the Plateau People's Web Portal is comprised of 6 different tribes. They could each have their own record on an item if they wanted to, and they could either make that their record public or private. So if it's, we want to educate everyone about this item that we feel is not well represented, you can do that. Or, we want to share information about this item within our own community, you can do that as well.
So, do you have any examples of how communities are using the information that they're putting up there? Like, whether it's public or private, are they kind of, is it up there for posterity, or is it being kind of activated through programs, outreach?
Well, there's a range. Well, I think what will be most interesting is, I mentioned earlier, we have the Tribal Stewardship Cohort Program here, so it'll be interesting to see how those 6 tribes end up using it. But I know some of them are using it as a platform. Some of them have received grant funding from national or state organizations to collect materials, collect research, and so that has to be made public at some point. They'll be doing it through there, and there's others that are using it to host all their internal government documents, because they want to make those available to the community, but not necessarily available to everyone else. And then some people are doing a mix. There's we have members from one tribal nation out in the Great Lakes area, and they're definitely planning to sort of have a public collection that's available, sort of a subset of their collection that's available to anyone who wants to come to the site and learn. And then they also are going to have a private section of the site that's only available to community members where they can share more sensitive information.
Really interesting. So for Washington State University, how many collections do you host?
Sorry, what was the last bit there?
For Washington State University, like, are you hosting several communities as they do this work, or?
Right. So, I mean, obviously we're hosting a few of our own. So this Plateau People's web portal is hosted through us, but it's more broadly available. We have our few demo sites internally. And then the 6 members of the Tribal Stewardship Cohort Program, we're hosting theirs for a couple years as part of the funding agreement. That's about it. We have a few scattered ones here and there, but we really don't have, we're not a huge university. We don't have really the resources to provide a full hosting service, which is why we've partnered with Coda to do Mukurtu.net and to Reclaim hosting as sort of recommended people who we know will be good to work with, who are responsible, who are interested in the same goals and the same intention that we have behind the project. So we do the code, we do a little bit of support and training, but the hosting is kind of outside of our scope.
Right. Yeah. So here in Carolina, we're kind of experimenting with these various community groups, and I don't know how much the cultural protocols mean to them. I mean, a lot of these are historically African American towns, which they might. I mean, I don't even know if it's something that we've asked if they have issues with
right.
who can see this material.
And
go ahead.
I mean, if you're looking at creating a public, pretty much a all forward-facing public site, you don't have to use any strict or closed protocols. They can all just be a public protocol. It's just one way to provide access. One idea that some of our cohort members came up with is, for a site that is mostly public, but you want to have maybe students working on the back end to start uploading and editing content, but you don't want to push it live to the public immediately, you can have a closed protocol that you use for in review or to be vetted. So you can use it to manage sort of a staging area and then a public area as well.
Does Mukurtu interact with any social media sites like Instagram or Twitter? Like, can you upload or, can you grab content from social media and include it on Mukurtu?
At the moment, no, that's not something that is built into it. That's not to say that it's something that isn't available. It is, as I mentioned earlier, the software, sort of the code that powers Mukurtu is Drupal, which has a very active user base. So there may be relatively straightforward ways to plug in some of those functions. That certainly would require somebody on staff who's capable of doing it. Or if it's something that's worthwhile, we could always talk about looking at how it might be implemented more widely. But no, not at the moment.
This is interesting.
Yeah, and one thing I haven't really shown you is sort of the user interface. Because it is really quite easy to use. I'm just going to look at what it would take to create a new digital heritage item. So in my case, I can just add digital heritage up at the top here, and it's really just typing in fields. Let's do a sample of each item. You have to have a title. In this case, I'm going to add a media asset. I've got a library up here on the right of items that I've already loaded to the site, but it's very easy to sort of do a one-click upload. Let's pull this one over here. That's just a drag and drop thing. That's optional. It's not actually required. You have to have your communities preset. I will add this to the landscapes community that we were in. You pick a protocol from your sort of preset list. I'll put this in the public one. And you can actually add items to multiple protocols, like I mentioned earlier. You have to pick at least one category, which, again, you set those ahead of time, and they're mainly used for high-level browsing. And then that's all you really have to do to create an item. I'll just save and see what that looks like. There we go. We have a title, we have an item, community protocol, and category. But that only really touches on a little bit of the metadata that's available. There's a few tabs of metadata available across here. All the required ones are in the Essentials tab. If you go over to the Core tab, we have the cultural narrative and traditional knowledge, which is a great place for members of the community to expand with more information, and then just a general description field as well. You can add more keywords down here. A few different options for rights and permissions. You can include publisher, fairly standard rights data. We have Creative Commons licensing built in, so obviously for content which you hold the copyright, you can use one of the relevant Creative Commons 4.0 licenses. And then we also have, which is another project, through a project called Local Context, which is at localcontext.org. We have traditional knowledge labels. And these are generally used for content where you don't have the copyright. Either it's images that are old enough to be in the public domain, or they were taken by someone else, but they allow you to identify the original intended use or the intended restrictions on an item, whether it's seasonal, restricted to family members, restricted to men, women. There's a few different ones here. I'll just attach one to see what it looks like. Usually use either one or the other, the TK labels or the licensing. The additional metadata tab is sort of where you go for that standard Dublin Core format type identifier, pretty standard library and archives. You can add an address. We have some Google mapping built into it. I'll just throw a pin up on Pullman for the moment so you can see. And you can add a location description as well. You can also connect items, digital heritage items to others. I'm going to add related right in here just to show what it looks like. Sort of a start filling in the box, and then it auto-generates from content that's existing on your site. And let's see what some of those changes look like. Okay, so this is the TK label that I added up here. There is it on the map, and and I attached to a related item. So if you have multiple items in your collection that are related, you can either build them into sort of a sub-collection on your site, or you can just relate them individually and jump between items. And since I added a map point to that item, it's going to actually show up automatically on my map view. Let's see if I can find out where I put it. It's probably one of the Pullman ones. There we go. So it's quite easy to edit individual items. The process is very similar for editing communities and categories and cultural protocols and users. There are functions built in for more of a batch importing if you want to go ahead and basically there's an Excel spreadsheet that you can fill out and sort of bulk upload a bunch of information at once. I'm not going to go into that today. That's quite a lengthier discussion. But it's a pretty easy user interface once the site itself is installed. There's not a lot of technical expertise needed to actually interact with the site.
So your instances of community collections through Washington State, has that been in collaboration with the library? Or is it
yes, yeah. Okay. Right. So I work for, I'm a librarian at the Washington State University Libraries. I'm also within, we have a department called the Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation at sort of our umbrella department that manages a lot of this. We have materials in collections, particularly a lot of the materials in this site are from our manuscripts, archives, and special collections department and other institutions like, the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture up in Spokane and others. So a lot of this is coming from library or archival collections.
Okay, so it's like the images and the recordings up here, they do not reside in the library, they reside in the communities, and these are the surrogates are available through.
Yeah, in this case, in particular case of this site, most of these do reside with the library or the institutions, but and this site was put together as a type of digital return to communities, but it could certainly be done the other way,
Okay.
depending on how communities want to work with it. It would be a great way if you have, a lot of people who want to make all of their material or some of their materials available, but they don't want to actually grant the physical items to a university. It would be a great way to go, get a small digital scanner or camera, go outside to individuals' homes or to a community center, sort of do a collections activity with people coming in, upload it, and then more people will have wider access, but the owners can keep the original materials. That would be a great kind of project.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I came in and listened because I'd heard of Mukato in a couple of other contexts, and this is probably the most information I've ever gotten about it.
Oh, good.
Which is great. And I'm meeting with some stakeholders tomorrow morning through the library and a couple of professors that are also interested in potentially using the software.
Right.
To try to see if what it does matches what we need.
Of course. And if you want, or if anybody wants more information, you can reach me at either of these two emails that are up on the screen. The support one will go to our entire team, but I manage that. I'm sort of the first contact. The other one is me directly. And we're always happy to schedule either individual or group sessions like this for anyone who's interested in learning more. Otherwise, we're going to keep running these sort of public forums, ideally about every other week, twice a month. So.
Yeah, I think if their interest is piqued enough that they would probably schedule something to get their specific questions answered. But I think
yeah, absolutely.
Information.
Yeah, I have, I think, 2 other sessions this week with people from different institutions who want a one-on-one session, either to see more or to do additional training. So we do that all the time.
Okay, well, I don't have any more questions. I really appreciate the time. It was kind of nice being able to talk to you.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
So if you would, like I said, if you would like a copy of the recording, since we don't have any registration of the software we're using, send me an email and I can send back the link once it's done, once the video is done rendering. And if you have any other questions, you know how to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you. It's great to meet you.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.